Sorry about that, guys, slight technical hitch. So I was just going to demonstrate another nodal cutting on this honeysuckle. Okay, so just above where there's growth activity, there you go, which I did just before on the last one, and there's more growth hormone, naturally occurring growth hormone at that point. Okay, but you can then dip that into a growth hormone if you wanted to and plant that on to guarantee success. We've made our own growth hormone here that you can learn out in a previous vlog, and the many uses of willow. Anyway, so that's honeysuckle. Okay, that's how you take a honeysuckle cutting. Some plants then aren't quite so obvious. They don't have the obvious nodal activity, so you have to be a little bit more creative with your cutting. Okay, and like I said, just experiment and see what you come up with. Now, we were looking at also plant identification, and all of these plants have been previously identified. All we got to do is find out what they are called. So a great resource obviously is books and the internet, that you can find out what plants are. There's also apps that you can find that are really great for finding plants. And then when you start delving into the world of plants and plant identification, you soon realize that Latin is the method that's used to identify plants, and then it starts getting a bit complicated, or you think it is, because it is a difficult language to understand, Latin. But the reason that's being used to identify all living creatures is because it's a set language and it doesn't change around the world. So a lot of plants have a common name, and that common name it differs from country to country and region to region, and some plants have many common names, and it makes identification and classification practically impossible. So the binomial system came up, so it has two names, and it's Latin, and that was derived by well, someone who's credited for it was a Swedish botanist called Carl Linnaeus in the 17th century. There's a sage cutting. I'm going to remove some of those smaller leaves there, just to slow down the loss of moisture, which is known as transpiration. We're just going to slow that down. And what we're doing with our cuttings, I'm digressing a little, what we're doing with our cuttings, we are taking use of the plant's natural ability to rejuvenate. And we've been doing this for centuries, and plants offer us this amazing ability, so we can then propagate them. And you'll realise that most plants that we see in the shops have been propagated through vegetative methods, because you can guarantee a healthy plant as long as the plant stock is healthy. You get quicker root production, so it can be quicker than seed germination, and it's a great way to increase your plants. Anyway, going back to the binomial naming system, so when you start looking into plants and they have two Latin names, the first name is its genus, which you could relate to being a generic name, so the genus could be a large group of plants. And then the second name is the species, so you could say that that's the specific part of that genus. Okay, so with honeysuckle, its common name is honeysuckle, its genus is Lonicera, and it has several species, one of them being Japonica. Okay, so the species also relates to an individual specific element of that plant. So Japonica actually means that it comes from the Far East. Okay, so this is Lonicera japonica, honeysuckle. And when you start looking into the Latin names and practicing, they do start to make sense. But if they don't, there is lots of resources. This is a great little book. And there's another type of honeysuckle, and I've been trying to get my tongue around it, and it says it's Cymenum. Pericle Cymenum. And then what it does, it breaks it down into its sounding letters. Pericle Cymenum. Pericle Cymenum. Pericle Cymenum. There you go. So Latin, even though it is difficult, it's worth having a go. And what that actually means, Pericle Cymenum, it refers to a Greek, I think his name was, what was it? An Argonaut. Remember that film, Jason and the Argonauts? Well, an Argonaut, he was one of the Argonauts, and his ability was to change shape. And that's why this honeysuckle has also been given that name, because it can change shape. So that's the species. With
Miles, Sophia's mentioned that when we get the go ahead to allow people at the allotment again,
yeah.
Is she allowed to start volunteering there? I guess the best thing to do is ask her to give you a call.
Yeah, give me a call. That'd be great, Sophia. It'd be good to have you down here. Yeah, give me a call. We are going to be putting something in place, and hopefully, you know, not too soon, in the not too distant future, we will be opening and having some kind of volunteering activity going on. It'd be great to see you down here, Sophia.
And also the level 1 horticulture course that we run down here, that definitely will be starting again in August. We'll have start dates of that next week.
Going back to the binomial naming system, the two Latin names that plants are given. The genus, so that's the generic name. So sage, its generic name, its genus is Salvia, and its species name is, on this particular one, is officinalis. And then when you look up what officinalis means, it means medicinal. So then you start getting a picture of how accurate and how important these Latin names are and how useful they are to us. Because sage doesn't really tell us much about the plant, but officinalis, or Salvia officinalis, tells us that it has medicinal properties. This is rosemary. Rosemary is its common name, and that may differ all around the world, but its Latin name, its binomial name, is Rosmarinus officinalis. So this also has medicinal properties. So when you start looking into those Latin names, you can then start, when you start building up a picture of what they mean, it helps you remember, and it's quite interesting. So with rosemary, it's a slightly different method. I'm going to zoom into that. You peel it off the branch, and it creates this here, and it's called a heel cutting. You just take that bit of bark off, and then you pop that in your pot. I'll demonstrate that again. So here's the Rosmarinus officinalis, and I'm going to take this stem here, and I'm going to peel. And when you peel it away, it creates a foot. It's called a heel cutting, in fact. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take the growing tips off, and that's quite important on all of your cuttings. You take the growing tip off because there's a growth hormone at the tip. If you remove that, it will then encourage more lateral growth and more root growth. So there we are. And what I did there, I removed all the leaves. These little needles are in fact leaves, and they will be cooling down the same as any other leaf. They'll be losing moisture through transpiration, and what that will do, the plant will die when it dries out. Here we go, here's another one. There's a nice one there, got a big one. I'm going to peel that off like so. Came up with two there. I'm going to just remove that. That's the heel. Just take that off because it's easier to insert it into the growing media. I'm going to take the growing tip off, and that's normally the softer part of the plant, the fresh growing tip. I'm going to remove that, and then all the rest of the leaves, I'm going to do that. And that will slow down the moisture loss, and hopefully buy enough time for the plant to rejuvenate, and that's what it's going to start doing now. One more, I think we've got enough space in there. Now, with cuttings, Same again as the seeds, they do not want to be in direct sunlight. The reason being is they don't have any roots to cool themselves down and to drink, and they will just evaporate and die. So they really want to be in a shady location, shady but warm. Okay, and the best time to take cuttings is probably in the morning when they've had a good drink and they're full of moisture, and they start losing moisture during the day, especially on a hot day, because they'll be cooling themselves down on a day like today, and they may not then strike. That's the term used for growing roots. Okay, they may not strike. That's a funny shaped stem there. You can just put that in there like that. There we go. No, it doesn't want to sit up straight, that way. Now the reason why I'm placing these around the edge of the pot, I'm going to try another one. You will probably persevere and do a better job than this, but the reason why you put them around the edge of the pot is because it is actually warmer there around the edge of the pot. So they do like the warmth, but they don't want the direct sunlight. So let's imagine they all strike, they all grow roots, and you'll be able to tell if they have because you'll see new growth coming out the plant. Okay, then what you do, you will tip them out and you just separate them, break them up, and then pot them on in their own pots, in their individual pots, until they're big enough and healthy enough to go outside. So I'm going to give this a good water, and I'm going to give it a good water with our homemade rooting hormone, which you can see on a previous vlog, and this is made from willow bark, and it's very easy to do, and you just dilute to water, and there you go. Again, the first water is the most important. Just give it a really good soak. You want to see water draining through the bottom. That's a good sign of drainage. Perfect. And like I say, do not put your cuttings in direct sunlight, they will perish. Okay, so that's the end of plant propagation and plant identification. Do have a go at identifying plants. Don't be put off by the Latin names. The genus generic name is like a surname, and the species name is like its Christian name, but they just put them back to front for some reason. Don't be put off by it, by the complicated words. Try and learn them, and it's really exciting to find out what these plants mean and what these names mean and what these plants offer for us. All that's left for me to say
Jeez.
is, you're right, Jamie.
I think the farmer's just got overheated there.
Tune in next week for Stuart's Art and Relaxation, same time, 10 o'clock on Thursday. Thanks for listening, guys. See you next time.